Everyone having a good day so far? Yeah, okay, somebody is? Great. Couple of housekeeping things. First of all, we are in the scavenger hunt. Let's Talk Cyber is the code. If you didn't write it down, all one word, all lowercase. We are going to send you a message to provide feedback on the day, and we really value your feedback. And so please make sure you do fill that in. It's a simple multi-choice today while it's still fresh in your mind. And then finally for the evening, hopefully some of you will come to the party tonight. Anyone in the mood for a party? There is free booze, okay? What more can I say? So the buses will start leaving here at 5:30, so right after we finish in here. With Dorit, will probably be a few minutes after. Start from then on, and it goes to 9 o'clock tonight. And then we'll all go back to the hotel and go straight to bed so we'll be fresh for the morning. Right? What do you mean wrong? All right. Great. Well, we've got a information-packed next hour and a half. And so without further ado, let's get it started again. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Pascal Verardo, Network Research Belgium, and Rafi Zvi, CEO of BackBox.
Thank you, Pascal.
Hi, Rafi.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. So we did this 2 weeks ago in Vegas for the CPX US, and when we started this, I made a joke. I got some laughs, but everybody said, don't do a joke in Europe. People don't laugh. So I decided to give it up, so we're just going to kick this off. I'm just telling you that looking at the crowd, I feel like Madonna in concert, but don't worry, I'm not going to take my clothes off or sing like a virgin. We got a little bit, okay. So that's good. So thanks for being here. Thank you, Checkpoint, for hosting us. Peter mentioned housekeeping, so I just want to say something before we start about housekeeping. Tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock, for those of you who were at our breakout, we gave away an Oculus Go VR system. We're going to give another one tomorrow at 3 p.m. in our booth, the BackBox booth. Two pieces of good information and one bad. I mentioned this in my breakout. Whoever wins that Rift, that Oculus Go system, the good news is you're going to get it tomorrow, so we have it here. The bad news is that we hacked all those giveaways, and whenever you play any game, there's going to be the BackBox logo in the background. So you're going to constantly see us. The good news, once you place a PO for licenses, we're going to take that logo away, so you'll be fine. Okay, so I have Pascal here with me. Today we want to cover quickly how we can help you users to better manage and maintain your checkpoint and security infrastructure. We're going to go through some of the capabilities that we offer in order to save you time, minimize downtime, and allow you to manage multiple hundreds and thousands of devices very efficiently. So going back a little bit, when we started this, the first concern that we had, that we heard from customers, was around disaster recovery. How do we make sure that we have a good disaster recovery procedure in place? How do we know that if we have any type of failure, we are able to recover quickly and minimize downtime? So that was our first offering. This was about 8 years ago when we started our partnership with Checkpoint as well. And we wanted to make sure that we are able to collect all the necessary configuration files for a good disaster recovery procedure. So one of the things we did is, again, teamed up with Checkpoint and looked at the different procedures that Checkpoint had to offer in order to enable that process. And what we did on top of that is help you take your infrastructure and all the devices you have in them, this could be management system, virtual systems, gateways, and go through a process, an automated process, where we collect the files and store them securely in a central location, rather than maybe what you're doing today, where you have different scripts and you have files scattered in different locations on the network. So the initial offering was around collecting these files, verifying the integrity of the files, and storing them in one easy-to-find location. And the reason why we did that is we wanted to make sure that you have a good way of recovering any of your devices or any of your software if it fails for any reason. This could be a hardware problem, it could be a software issue, it could be a human error. Any of these reasons might require you to recover that configuration. So with BackBox, we're basically allowing you to use either built-in procedures, step-by-step procedures, or an automated way of recovering all your devices. That means that with a single click, if any device fails and you're replacing it, with a single click, BackBox will allow you to take that last good configuration file, decrypt it, upload it to your gateway or management platform, and recover it without any human intervention. That means that we're able to take that device and bring it to the same state that it was before it failed. So that was the initial offering. And then when we started talking to our customers, we wanted to know what else. What else can we help you with? What else are you doing manually or not doing at all because it's tedious and annoying? So the next thing we looked at is asset management. How do we help you dynamically store all the information for your devices and your assets on the network? So since we already had access to the devices, we had the credential information, we have the connectivity to the devices, we started collecting information about the devices themselves. Things like, what hardware platform am I running on? What software version do I have, major and minor version? What about my licensing and my contracts? When do those expire? So during that collection process, we allow you to get a single view of everything you have on the network. Why do we need that? So let's say we're planning an upgrade. Just a quick show of hands. How many already upgraded to R80.X? Quite a few of you. So you know that before you go through that process, you need to verify two things: that the hardware platform will support that upgrade, and that the software version will allow you for either a single or multiple software updates. So with the asset management and our ability to give you this information, you can now see exactly what you have in your infrastructure and plan that upgrade path as you need to. This will also help you better manage your licensing and license expirations and contracts that are about to expire. So all this information is presented for all the devices that you have on the network. So we collected the configuration files, we're collecting the asset information, but we also have the network information. Now, we wanted to see what we can do with this and how we can help you, again, automate maybe a process that used to be manual, and that is mapping your network. So now that we have the IP information and the routing information, we can now better help you draw out a dynamic map of your network, which is nice to have if you ever want to see what's going on, but it's even better in the case that you want to deploy policy changes. So if you need to add a rule or add multiple rules, the one thing that you need to figure out in order to allow access from one network to another or from one host to another is which firewalls do I need to access, which management systems or CMAs do I use in order to deploy these new rules. So with our network map, we basically allow you to map out our source and our destination and give you visualization on all the layer 3 devices that you're going through. So this will help you to now understand, where do I deploy my new rules? So we've been collecting information so far. We wanted to see how we can help you push configuration back to devices. How do we take the information that we already have and help you better manage and save you time by helping you push configuration and make configuration changes to your devices? A couple of examples. One of them is obviously Office 365, which is very complex to maintain because the IP addresses, the v4, the v6, the FQDNs, they constantly change. And if we want to deploy this in our security policy, we need to make manual changes every time Microsoft decides to add or remove or change an IP address or URL. So with our solution, we can automatically, weekly or daily, make policy changes in order to allow you to make those modifications to the management, and by that, save you a lot of time and human error. So you wouldn't have to wait for a user to tell you that Skype is not working because you're ahead of the game. Because we already made the changes for you, and we created all the necessary objects and the rules in order to support that type of access. Of course, with R80, we're utilizing the Checkpoint API, which makes life a lot easier for us. So that means that you can manipulate the policy in any way without ever having to give somebody access, full read-write access to the management system. A second example could be deploying radius authentication on our firewall. So we want to allow people to log into the system on a CLI level, but we want them to use radius authentication. So if you need to deploy this over multiple gateways, A, it's going to take you a lot of time, but the bigger problem is if you make a mistake, you might get locked out. So with our verification process, we can not only push that configuration to the devices, but we can also verify them while we're doing it. That means that while we're maintaining connectivity and pushing that config change, we'll initiate a second connection and test that these configuration changes were successful. So connect again, log in with a radius username and password, make sure that it works, and then commit it and move on to the next gateway. If at any point we see something that's not working, that authentication process didn't work, we can automatically roll back and save you that lockout. Last thing I want to talk about before I pass it on to Pascal is having the ability to monitor our devices on a health level. So everybody's using a monitoring system. You always know when your devices are up or down, but we actually want to help you prevent downtime before it occurs and before it affects the network. With our IntelliChecks, we're allowing you to check application-specific parameters, anything from connection table, certificate expirations, NAT table, everything that is application-related, and give you alerts ahead of time to help prevent downtime. So if my connection table is getting saturated and I do have a limit on it, if I set a limit on it, I will know before it actually affects the network. So we'll never get to that 100%, unless, of course, you're under a DDoS attack. But we'll never get to that 100% and have that firewall stop forwarding packets. We will give you the information ahead of time. Now, we're also collecting this information over time, so it's going to help you better plan for the future. How do we know which device, which UTM do we need for the next 3 years? So while we're collecting this information, we'll give you your growth and help you better plan for that growth. So this could be anything from the throughput, client connections, anything that is very application specific, which I think today you won't get with a monitoring system that will just tell you if we're up or if we're down. So these are the 5 pieces of automation that we have to offer that we believe is A, going to save you a lot of time, and B, minimize downtime by helping you recover quickly and maybe even foresee problems and solve them before they affect the network. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Pascal.
Thank you, Rafi. So I'm working since about 6 years as a customer with BackBox. And initially, when I started at Electrabel, there we deployed. It's a pretty large environment. So afterwards, at NRB, my first project there was to implement BackBox as well. So a bit summary for NRB. It's a Belgian ICT service provider, founded in '86 with about 2,000 employees, 2 global data centers. We do housing, hosting, and managed staffing and some consultancy services. So in our data centers, we have about a mix of 800 devices. They are in our data center or on customer premise. So these are all integrated in BackBox, for which we run a daily backup during night, doing multiple schedules, group per device type or per vendor. So devices are hosted in our DC or on customer location. And specific tasks can be executed as well. Like if we want to do an automated policy push or some file presence check on a specific server with some reporting behind it, it's all possible. So it makes our life a lot easier as an administrator to manage the devices and the backups. So an example for disaster recovery. So an admin, so imagine that a device is failing, so it needs to be RMA'd. As an administrator, I make sure that I have a new box for the RMA. I make sure that my software version is installed properly, the one which I had before. Configure my management interface. Make sure that it's connected and that BackBox can log on. For the rest, I log into my BackBox management console. Choose the backup file that I want to restore, for example, the backup of yesterday. BackBox makes sure that the file has not been tampered with, that it's done by the checksum verification. And afterwards, it's a one-click restore procedure for me as a client. So very useful and time-consuming. So as a security compliance story, we can integrate BackBox as well for verification of security settings on my devices to make sure that they are compliant against my company. So during night, every time a connection is done to the gateway, so polling of my security configuration is done as well, reporting and alerting of my security deviations against my company corporate policy, and automatic deployment is done for the correct configuration to comply with corporate standards, to make sure that these are in line with what I want to be there for my compliancy. So over time, presentation of my compliance status is done as well, which is interesting for the company 27001 ISO certification.
Thank you, Pascal.
Thank you, Rafi.
Thank you. So I asked if we could take questions, and logistically it's a problem, so we can't take any questions. So instead, what I decided to do is I'll ask myself a question that came up the most when we saw you guys in our booth, and maybe help clarify a couple of things. We only have a minute left, so I'll do this quick. The most common question that we got is, do we integrate with external systems? And the answer for that is yes, on multiple levels. So we have a RESTful API that you can utilize. We're obviously, I mentioned before that we're communicating with Checkpoint both through CLI and through the API as well. So it's a bi-directional way of communicating with BackBox. So we can talk to external systems and external systems can talk to us. And of course, everything around notification, of course, is supported for external SIM systems, so SNMP or syslog. The second most common question that we got is around the architecture. Our solution is both multi-tenant and distributed. So whether you're a large enterprise, scattered globally, or you're a managed service provider, BackBox can be deployed and does support multi-tenancy for different groups running virtual systems, and distributed architecture and clustering, so you can deploy our solution in different locations communicating to a central management system. So the only thing I'm waiting for right now is for those 6 seconds to kind of run out. I want to see if there's going to be music like the Oscars where they kind of kick you off stage. But thank you very much for being here. Thank you, Checkpoint, for hosting us. If you have any questions, please stop by our booth and we'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker started programming at the age of 9 and may be the only person in the world who makes his automobile purchase decisions based on connectivity and IoT technology. With more than 20 years of internet security experience with Checkpoint software, please welcome Thierry Karsenti.
Good afternoon, everyone. How are you doing today? Okay? Can't hear you. Are you doing good? Yes. Good to have so many of you today here at Checkpoint Experience, and again, welcome everyone. I love technology. You know, technology in many ways is my cup of tea, as you can see, right? I love technology because technology, its fundamental purpose is about enhancing the human experience. Whether it's about optimizing our performance, getting things solved in a faster way, increasing efficiency, or just connecting people in a better way. For the past 20 years, my job has been about helping customers secure their digital transformation. But when I'm back home, my job is not about securing digital transformation, it's about securing digital natives, my 2 loved kids. When in the early days I did my very best to keep them away from technology, I had very quickly to adjust my strategy. And I had to face the reality. Technology is at the heart of the daily life of this new generation. The way they consume music, the way they consume video, the way they create content, whether it's for fun or as homework for school, the way they communicate and share with their friends, with family. I have to confess that this daily FaceTime video call I'm getting with them when I'm traveling is just priceless. So of course I want them to embrace technology and the digital world, which is their world. But as a father, I'm aware and I'm concerned about the fact that Google, Facebook, Snapchat tend to know more about my kids than I do. And that's, to some extent, the security paradox that I need to deal with. Now, for many of us in this room, in our job, we have to deal with the very same paradox. Our organizations are increasingly adopting new technology as it brings positive value to our business. It just makes us smarter in our decisions. It gives us agility. It gives us a competitive edge. And ultimately, technology is becoming at the core of any business. However, this increased adoption of technology also means an increased attack surface and an increased reliance on it. At the end of the day, what that means is an increased risk in terms of operational disruption and leakage. Now, we tend to consume and adopt more technology, but we also have to face with an increased diversity of devices. IoT is just everywhere. And it keeps collecting and collecting more and more data for many reasons. First, a lot of those devices actually connect back to the cloud, which gives virtually unlimited storage capacity. Second, this data collection brings tremendous value, such as improving the customer or the user experience. Think of me as a Netflix or an Amazon customer. Their ability to provide me a unique experience with recommendations based on my taste and my personal preferences is very unique. And this is based on a lot of data they collect about me, combined with artificial intelligence. If in the previous century, oil was the most important and most valuable resource, today, data is the new oil. And it's basically about massive collection and consumption of data, which creates a new challenge for us. Think of Amazon Alexa, for instance. Just about 2 months ago, a US court actually investigated on a murder and asked Amazon to provide recordings days before and after the murder. Now, what should Amazon do? Should Amazon provide recordings to the court? Or should Amazon prioritize customer privacy? 2 weeks ago, Google announced a software update to their Net Secure alarm systems. These software updates includes new functionalities, and the key highlight is to bring Google Assistant to any of those devices through a software update. Now, that obviously rang a bell to many of their customers, as this is an alarm system, and in the technical specifications, it was mentioned nowhere that there was an embedded microphone. New areas of concerns in terms of data privacy, and that also is something that we need to care about. Many of you are probably familiar with the common vulnerability scoring systems, which is basically a way to capture the principal characteristics of a vulnerability and associate it with a score from 0 to 10, defining its severity. This is very useful for our security teams that then can prioritize their tasks. Now, I want to bring your attention to a couple of things here. Number one, as you can see, when you look at the usual list of suspects, the volume of vulnerabilities is growing like hell. And the second point that I want to highlight is that if you focus on 9 and more score on vulnerabilities, you realize that this percentage is increasing significantly. Now, to make it very clear, a score of 9 or higher is really bad. You know, it basically means that a hacker can leverage this vulnerability through some kind of exploitation in very simple ways, with limited to no privileged access, with limited to no user interaction. Simple and high impact, right? And this is alarming. If you think of Apple as being a great company, and I'm one of their fans, I also need to realize that around 20% of their vulnerabilities have a score of 9 or higher. And it's not unique to Apple. Google, 26%. Adobe, and we all have Adobe software, including the reader on our laptops. 70% of their vulnerabilities have a score of 9 or higher. So this is definitely here an area of concern, and clearly we do have an exposure. And this is not it. This is here just about the vulnerabilities that we know about. And looking at the trends, there is more to come. Now, this is about technology, and technology is very important in cybersecurity. But our people, to some extent, can also become the weakest link.
What is one of your online passwords currently?
It is my dog's name and the year I graduated from high school.
Oh, what kind of dog do you have?
I have a Chihuahua Papillon.
And what's its name?
Jameson.
Jameson. And where'd you go to school?
I went to school back in Greensburg, Pennsylvania.
What school?
Hempfield Area Senior High School.
Oh, when did you graduate?
In 2009.
Oh, great.
Well, most of them are Italian.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah,
Like
so
what? Like what's a good Italian password?
my grandma's name,
What's your grandma's name?
Maria.
Maria. So Maria is your password?
Oh yeah, now you know my password. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, Maria, Maria, right? Technology is not always the weakest link. Now I want to bring to your attention 2 data points, 2 hard trends that are relevant to our industry. First, and Gil briefly mentioned it this morning, every year customers tend to spend around 11% more on IT security. Having said that, the paradox is that the security outcomes are not that great, right? If you look at the aggregated number of compromised records in the past 5 years, we've reached around 8 billion records that have been compromised. And this is not to mention the operational disruptions that occur without little to no report. If you think about it, we're around 7.5 billion people on this planet, 3 billion of which have access to the internet. So we're basically saying that an average of 2 to 3 personal records per man or woman or child have been lost. The facts used to identify ourselves as unique, such as date of birth, social security number, city of birth, driver's license number, the sport team that we prefer, the first car that we ever drove, our mother's maiden name, these are no longer sufficient to reconcile that we are who we say we are. To put that differently, we spend more and to some extent don't get enough in return. And that should question as well some of the way we design security. Now, what's next? What are some of the trends looking ahead? First, there will be an increased attack surface. As we adopt new technologies more and more, we continue to increase the diversity of devices as we collect and consume more data, as we have more dependencies on these. Our exposure is increasing. Our risk is de facto increasing. There's also an increasing regulation and associated penalty. Looking at Europe, GDPR regulation is the perfect example. Penalties that can go up to 4% of the annual global revenue of a company. Breach notification that needs to occur within 72 hours. These are great examples of increased regulation. I talked earlier about IoT devices and the lack of security. The state of California is ahead. State of California approved a bill last summer, and starting next January, so in a few months from now, you no longer can sell an IoT device in the California state if you do not have built-in security controls, including authentication, including data disclosure controls, right? So more regulation coming. And of course, our user community, to some extent, is going through some apathy to a breach fatigue, right? My credentials have been lost. Marriott has been breached, and it included a lot of personal information. But you know what? This is almost becoming like background noise to many of our users, right? So what are some of the questions that we need to answer? First, how quickly can we adapt to support our business? Are we enabling business? Are we facilitating business? Or is security slowing down business? Are we improving the user experience, the customer experience? Or do we make it more complex because of security? Are we the Dr. Yes that Oded mentioned earlier when he talked about Infinity 2.0 and our nano security strategy? Or are we the Mr. No from the past? How effective are my defenses? And this is not just about the CVE coverage, and this is not just about the IOCs that we're able to detect in real time or the attacks that we're able to prevent. It all goes down to the basics of what is my percentage on confidentiality, on integrity, on availability in my estate. And finally, in case of an event, how much time does it take me to realize that something is happening or has happened? Do I have the right tools in place, the right measures in place to give me a real-time visibility so that I can tackle the challenge very quickly? These are questions that we need to answer. And some of the answers, for sure, include expertise. Our industry faces a significant shortage of cybersecurity talents. There is a shortage estimated to 2 million talents this year. This is expected to grow within 2 years to 3.5 million, right? Negative unemployment. And when we do have talents in-house, how empowered are our security teams to collaborate both internally as well as with external resources to share threat intelligence and be able to act on it? The most successful organizations nowadays tend to view organizations they work with as partners. And Checkpoint Experience is all about this, right? It's about accelerating the learning curve, about sharing best practices so that when you're back to your business, you can actually answer questions better and faster. Now, how do you apply those answers to those questions? Are you able to make it consistent all across your systems? If a human has to touch it, it's probably not built to scale. If you want to have real-time threat prevention, you need to have no human intervention. If you want to have real-time reaction, this needs to be fully automated. And last, what is the framework that we're applying to the business? How to work with business partners, technology partners, so that we get better security outcomes and better business outcomes. Are we investing in point solutions that address a narrow challenge? Or are we looking ahead and investing into solutions and an ecosystem partners that is ready for the future? Right? So hopefully you'll take advantage of Checkpoint Experience as an opportunity to help you get better answers to those challenges. And for sure, the session coming next with the leading cybersecurity woman in this industry, Dorido, should be a great source of inspiration. With that, I would like to thank you very much and again wish you a great Checkpoint Experience. Thank you all.